Hailing from Hobart, Tasmania, the SuperWax Mini is an active two-way loudspeaker with a large 15-inch woofer mated to a high-efficiency 1-inch compression driver within a solid bronze waveguide. The speaker is powered by an internal Hypex Encore amplifier that produces 350 watts of total power per speaker. The Mini's use of CNC machined birch plywood, rear-facing port, and internal amplification, complete with DSP tuning, give it a reported response of 32 Hz to 25 kHz, meaning that for the vast majority of listeners, the SuperWax Mini will react and sound like a true full-range speaker in a room with no additional need for a subwoofer. Because the SuperWax Mini is an active speaker, there's no need for additional or costly amplification either. However, it is important to note that the Mini is not a smart speaker in the traditional sense. Yes, it has built-in amplifiers and some internal DSP control and adjustment, not to mention input selection and volume control. But it lacks features like built-in streaming, voice control, or a phono preamp. Now, on the back side of each speaker, you're going to find connections for analog audio in the form of balanced and unbalanced connections, optical and coaxial digital audio inputs, and a digital XLR or AES3 input. You can switch between the inputs, adjust the volume, and switch between the 3 preset tuning profiles using the included remote. When setting up the SuperWax Mini, there are a few things to keep in mind. First, Pitt and Giblin note that all incoming signals, even analog ones, are going to be converted to digital by the Hypex amplifier modules and run through its DSP before being converted back to analog and then amplified. For this reason, it isn't necessary to use an external DAC with the Minis, as it would introduce an unnecessary additional digital to analog conversion to the signal chain. This is not to say that you can't use a DAC, you simply may not reap all of the benefits of one or hear a difference if you do. Additionally, while the left and right speakers are identical in layout and electronics, the left speaker is the primary, with the right acting more as a slave. This allows for proper input selection and volume control between the two speakers. Pitt and Giblin include a digital coaxial cable that links the two speakers together and transmits the right channel information to the right speaker without additional wires. However, analog connections are handled in a more traditional way, with the left output being connected to the left speaker and the right to the right speaker. But no sooner do I tell you that no DAC is required with the SuperWax Mini do I go and hook up one of my reference DACs, the Eversolo A8. Why? Well, the answer is simple. The A8 has HDMI connectivity, not to mention built-in streaming. So whether I wanted to watch TV, movies, or listen to music, the A8 has me covered. And while I realize that using the A8 introduces an additional conversion, I really couldn't detect much, if any, difference in sound quality with or without the A8 in the signal chain when listening day to day. So the added convenience of Eversolo's app-based control and integration with our Sony Bravia TVs and Apple TV 4K far outweighed any potential sonic pitfalls. And this matters, at least to me, because the A8's elevated the SuperWax Mini's overall user experience, allowing me to use the Eversolo app or our Apple TV 4K remote instead of the included Hypex one, which sucks. And when it comes to positioning, I found the Minis to be easy to place within our room, resting about 18 inches off our front wall with approximately 9.5 feet between the speakers themselves. They almost hit 20 Hz in room at my listening position and at volumes well above what I comfortably listen at. I found a little toe end further cemented the speaker's imaging, resulting in a very, and I mean very, linear response from about 100 Hz on up. While I do not care much about measurements, the Mini may be one of the most linear wave-guided loudspeakers I have ever measured. It's no secret that I am a fan of high-efficiency horn-style speakers from the likes of Klipsch, but I'm also a fan of powered speakers in general, especially those that exhibit a high degree of craftsmanship and finish, a la, say, Bang & Olufsen. Up till now, there haven't been many, if any, speakers in the hi-fi space that combine my favorite types of loudspeakers into one, quite like the SuperWax Mini. While the Mini may look like a slightly beefed up Heresy 4, its sonic footprint and capability exceed that of the Cornwall, outputting a smooth, neutral sound with absolute ease that, while not Bang & Olufsen in tone and transparency, inch very close to matching their speakers in clarity and intelligibility. I mean it. Those of you who may have already left a little snarky comment about how no horn speaker this or no powered speaker that, I would urge you to park your biases before judging the SuperWax Mini on its looks alone. The fact that the Mini separates itself from the likes of Klipsch or other vintage-inspired loudspeakers isn't an accident. Its use of DSP is one of the big reasons why the Mini can deliver such a consistent quality of sound and timbre across all genres of music and at virtually any volume within a given space. While it may not take much power to get a speaker like, say, the Cornwall to sing, those of you who use them as a reference like I do know they're not perfect. Devices such as those from, say, Mini DSP, along with more capable amplifiers like Musical Fidelity's New Vista 600.2 or Macintosh's massively powerful MC312, can pay huge dividends. When you get it all dialed in, the Cornwall's sound is something to behold, but what I've just described to you takes time, money, and a lot of trial and error. With the SuperWax Mini, it sort of crushes the Cornwall right out of the crate. And if you do run into issues, say for example, none of the speaker's 3 sonic presets completely suit your room and the Mini's, call it prodigious bass, is just too much for you, the guys at Pitt Giblin can tune your speakers to your liking remotely, provided you have a decent internet connection and a Windows laptop and a USB cable. And this is something they walked me through during my evaluation and that I can attest to working. However, for most of my listening, the guy's factory tuning was music to my ears. And let's talk about that bass, shall we? It's nuts! Quick on the draw and punches like Mike Tyson in its prime. While I hesitate to use phrases like no subwoofer required, in our room and for my taste, the Mini's 15-inch woofer energized our space in a way that was palpable, exciting, but not overbearing. And even when pressed into service playing back more artificial bass lines like those found on Enema or Lastling's recordings, the Mini wasn't one note or plodding. It was quite the opposite. The speed I've come to expect from either our Titans or the Cornwalls when properly driven was present, only the Mini's bass had a heft that I've come to enjoy from subwoofers like Kef's KC92, but maybe pulling up just a little bit short of forcing me to check my pants like when I listened with the SVS SB17. As impressed as I was by the Mini's low end, it was their transition from the bass to the mid-range and frankly treble that wowed me the most. In terms of timbre or tonality, the Mini is linear or neutral, but that isn't to say that it doesn't have character. So rather than possessing a warm or cool tone, the Mini gets it just right. Still, because of its active nature and use of DSP, there is a presence to the sound that isn't dissimilar from what I've experienced through costlier speakers, such as Bang & Olufsen's Beolab 90. I mean it. Everything is going to sound muffled and veiled in terms of clarity and presence compared to active speakers like the Mini. However, rather than becoming, say, the audio equivalent of an absolute hologram like the Beolab 90s, the Mini leans a little bit more fun, or better yet, kind of live venue. And in this respect, there are aspects of the Mini sound that took me back to my time spent with the previous generation La Scala, which, if you watch this channel, is high praise. When listening to jazz recordings from the likes of Diana Krall, the clarity is such that you're there, or should I say, the performer are there with you in the room. Seriously, the intelligibility of the Mini is first rate, and no doubt, Christie approved. But the icing on the cake has to be the effect that the bronze waveguide has on the treble. This is not a beamy, shouty, or horn-sounding speaker. It is controlled, effortless, and extended with an in-room presence that works well in various living situations and room compositions. I mean, it's brilliant. The speaker's extension is smooth and its roll-off is so nicely controlled that even troubled recordings can be enjoyed. For example, John Popper's many harmonica solos throughout Live from the Fall gave me goosebumps when listening through the Minis. This is a perfect example of a record that I can't always enjoy through speakers with horns or horn waveguides due to the sometimes piercing nature of it being a live recording. However, through the Mini, it was stunning. And then there is the scale and dynamics of damn near everything. There's nothing mini about the SuperWax Mini's sound, though as far as soundstage go, the Mini is more broad and live sounding than absolute when it comes to imaging, and that's okay. Center imaging is very good with an overall sonic plane of existence that rests in line with your seated ear height rather than nearer to the floor, but there are better speakers for absolute instrument and performer separation within the soundstage, but few that are likely to transport you to the live show and give you that you are there feeling with less fuss and equipment like the Mini. As far as dynamics are concerned, forget about it. I promise you will cry uncle before coming close to taxing the SuperWax Mini when it comes to volume or dynamics. But as taken aback by the SuperWax Mini as I am, it's not perfect. First, the quality of the speaker's build and finish is first rate and better than what I've come to expect from Klipsch's heritage line of products, including costlier models like the Cornwall and La Scala. That said, the day-to-day living experience doesn't completely leave speakers like the Cornwall or La Scala in the dust, nor does the Mini rise to the level of prestige or elegance one gets when spending this kind of money with, say, Bang & Olufsen. And it all comes down to the fact that while good, the Mini, Pitt Giblin, and frankly you, the listener, at the moment, are somewhat at the mercy of a third party, and that's Hypex. Don't get me wrong, Hypex makes some great products, and the implementation of their amplifiers within the SuperWax Mini makes for some genuinely great sound, but the user experience, mainly when relying on the cheap Hypex remote or when having to troubleshoot occasional errors, feels very DIY. And when this happens, and it does happen, the otherwise luxurious and bespoke feeling one gets living with the Mini starts to fade. For example, because the right speaker relies on an incoming signal from the left, it sometimes doesn't wake up from standby with the right speaker. Now, the quick fix is to hit the mute button on the Hypex remote twice, toggling the mute on and then off again, at which point the sound will output out of both speakers. It's a minor annoyance, sure, but it does occur. Furthermore, the signal sensitivity of the Hypex amp module may not always play nice with every source, especially those with variable volume or that may rely on an analog connection. Because of this, you may have to turn things up a bit to bring the speaker out of its standby mode when relying on its auto signal sense feature and a third-party device, which is not always ideal for low-level listening sessions or when maybe family members are trying to sleep in a nearby room. Now, I have made Pitt Giblin aware of these quirks and potential issues, and they have ways of addressing them should they arise. They told me that they set the internal amps up to work with the broadest range of third-party products, though they admit every preamp, streamer, or analog device is bound to be a little bit different here and there, so adjustments can be made if necessary. Now, I've made more than a few references to Klipsch's heritage line of products, specifically the Cornwall 4, which has been a reference of mine for over 3 years. The Cornwall 4 currently retails for around $6,500 a pair, and that's less than the Mini's $11,000-ish landed cost here in the US. That said, the Cornwalls require customers to also invest in electronics, which adds to their overall cost of ownership, not to mention the room a system built around these beautiful speakers is going to require. To more or less match the capability of what I experienced from the SuperWax Mini, I believe one would reasonably have to invest somewhere in the neighborhood between $6,000 to $12,000 in components when building a comparable system using the Cornwall 4s. For example, the Cornwall 4s, driven by the musical fidelity New Vista 600.2, being fed digital signals from the Eversolo A8, definitely could give the Mini a run for its money. However, the system I just described has a street price hovering around $18,000, which is quite a bit more than the Mini. I'm not trying to say that the SuperWax Mini is cheap, but there is a demonstrable value in what Pitt and Giblin have created. But if value is high on your priority list and you also want powered speakers with excellent, albeit a different type of sound quality, then look no further than Kef's LS60 Wireless. At just under $5,000, the LS60 Wireless remains the value king among more hi-fi leaning smart speakers. It is such a good speaker and a more complete end-to-end experience compared to the Mini. I prefer the Mini's more old school looks and charm. They are more of an inviting presence in the room and a real conversation starter, but pound for pound, you get way more of, well, just everything when investing in a pair of LS60s. On the far more affordable side of the spectrum, we have the 7s by Klipsch. At $1,200 a pair, the 7s are shockingly good and fun, but they don't hold a candle to what the Minis can do. To the uninitiated, the two speakers may appear to have similarities. I mean, they're both heritage-inspired, active, two-way speakers with horn-style waveguides after all. However, saying they're the same is akin to claiming, say, a Seiko Prospex is the same as a Rolex Submariner. Nevertheless, you may prefer the Seiko to the Rolex for any number of reasons such as ease of use and affordability, and that's fine because the 7s are great speakers. But make no mistake, just because a loudspeaker may look vintage, simple, or conjure up images of making your own in your garage back in the day, that's not what you're buying when shopping for and becoming an owner of something more bespoke like the SuperWax Mini. This speaker is capable of world-class sonic performance and could be a way forward for those wanting to, hang on to a more classic, less Silicon Valley hi-fi experience, but still have a simpler setup. While Pitt Giblin may not be a household name yet, they're well on their way to being a high-end hi-fi disruptor, and I am excited to see what their future holds because if the SuperWax Mini is any indication, something amazing has started to happen in Hobart. So that's it. That is now my take on Pitt Giblin's fabulous SuperWax Mini. What did you guys think? How many of you guys even knew about Pitt Giblin and the Mini? Sound off down in the comments below. And if you have any questions, and I think there might be quite a few, go ahead, you leave those down below as well, because you never know, it could end up on next Friday's Unplugged. Until then, remember, the only person who has to like the sound of your system is you. So happy listening, everybody. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully with this video, we are resuming normal operations. And Christy and I thank you very, very much for all of your support and patience these past 2 months. But yeah, we're back. And so thank you again for watching. And until next time, enjoy the rest of your day and we'll see you on the next video. Bye.